Hello and welcome back to the Shizzle Sticks channel. Today we're doing something a little bit different because you may have noticed that my upload schedule has not so much slipped as it has metaphorically hurled itself off the nearest cliff. Usually it just gets gently pushed down the stairs. And that's because since Christmas of 2024 I've been taking part in the playtest for a specific new game called SimplePlanes 2. So naturally I've been playing it with the sort of addiction usually associated with opium enthusiasts and people who say just one more game at 2:30 in the morning. That said, I've also been playing it long enough for those rose-tinted glasses to finally fall off. Only annoyingly, as I'm still seeing quite a lot of rose-tinted stuff. For those unfamiliar, SimplePlanes 2 is, to the absolute shock of nobody, the successor to SimplePlanes or SimplePlanes 1. A vehicle sandbox and simulation game where you get a pile of preset and modifiable parts and then proceed to bolt them together into planes or cars or tanks or whatever the deranged nightmare this is supposed to be. SimplePlanes 2 builds off that pedigree and pushes the boat out with the force of a general I'm having a stroke. And pushes the boat out with the force of a General Electric F-110. And because you can actually do that in this game, I mean that both literally and metaphorically. Think of it like Flyout, but more intuitive and with a more child-friendly filter, which is impressive because I'm around 30 and I'm still having an absolutely fantastic time with it like an overgrown child who's been handed a digital shed full of aircraft and missile bits and told, go on, do war crimes responsibly and get back by dinner time. Most importantly though, this bundle of near limitless power has multiplayer. Now if you're familiar with the previous game, you'll know that this was not a luxury you had unless you installed the multiplayer mod and then performed the usual ritual sacrifices to get it working properly. More on the multiplayer aspect later, but to start off with, the designer is leagues ahead of its predecessor. The designer feels very intuitive and getting an accurate exterior based off a blueprint and to a state where it's actually up and flying can take as little as an hour. Starting a build is as simple as pulling, pushing, stretching, bopping, twisting, you name it, just generally manhandling the absolute ever-loving shit out of fuselage blocks, which then let you make anything from stealth airframes to Formula 1 cars to, oh Christ, that fucking thing's back again. You can then slap on whatever you want to power it. Jet engines, piston engines, rotators, pistons, or all of them all at once if you've decided that reliability is for cowards and God's mercy is optional. The sky is the limit, in some cases quite literally. You can also throw on wings, build interiors, add customizable missiles, stick the game's mascot Chad in the cockpit, attach targeting pods, bombs, power train bits I've not really fiddled with yet, windows and all manner of other nonsense. You get the idea. The world is your lobster. And if for whatever reason this is all a little bit overwhelming for you, you can cast your eye over the cheeky selection of stock crafts they have on offer. You can then use those crafts to find yet more crafts that are hidden away in various places around the map. Naturally, as a stock craft builder, a few of my builds have made it into the game. For instance, you have the KT Velaton, a transporter and currently the largest and loudest stock craft in the game because subtlety is apparently for other people and not myself. Athena is a heavy bomber based on the Vulcan because Britain once looked at a Dorito and thought, ah yes, that will do nicely as a nuclear bomber. The Super Wasp needs no introduction, it is a successor to the game's original Wasp. And the Stormvark, my pride and joy and also my propaganda piece for asserting the F-111B's rightful dominance over the F-14. And no, I will not be taking any questions. There are two more of mine in the game hidden around the map, but if you want to know what they are, you'll have to buy the game and go find them yourself, you cheeky bastards. Of course, the other stock craft are absolutely fantastic. Just to pick a few of my personal favourites, we have the Dragon because its fly-by-wire system is absolutely mint and might as well be witchcraft. The Skylark because I'm British and therefore legally obligated to become emotionally attached to certain aircraft that look like a Spitfire. The Jerboa because it's such a nice helicopter to fly. It's honestly, I'm shit at flying helicopters and even I can fly that with some relative grace. And finally the Longtail because it just looks absolutely fucking gorgeous. No more words need to be said about it. Now once you've made or selected your preferred abomination, you hit the play button in the bottom corner and load into the game world. And the world is big. You've got a nice variety of airports and airfields to satisfy most of your runway-based urges. There's a road network with moving cars and a genuinely well thought out racetrack where you can practice your driving and become a racist. The clouds are volumetric now instead of just being a JPEG stapled to infinity, which is nice. You've got bridges to cross over, or more importantly bridges to blow up, and there's a castle with more bridges to blow up, and some castle walls which are really just reverse bridges when you think about it. There's also an aircraft carrier you can spawn on, take off from, and then immediately fail to land on because your confidence exceeded both your skill and your rest hook. So you plant yourself into the deck in a massive explosion and pretend it was just a systems test. There are also a few other notable locations I'll gloss over for now, along with some work in progress areas. However, there are also some issues I sincerely hope get addressed in the future. First off, the flight physics are absolutely fantastic. I think the dev team have struck a really nice balance between performance and realism. It's not 100% perfect, but you'd be very hard pressed to find this level of simulation in a sandbox game anywhere else. Big shout out to Nikki as well for doing God's work in dragging physics to its current state by the scruff of the neck. Jet engines also feel pretty good. Now, I must admit I'm slightly biased here because I think it's fair to say I had quite a bit of input on those. They're not exactly where I personally want them to be, but whenever you're trying to balance simulation depth with a smooth multiplayer experience, compromise is eventually going to turn up in some form or another. Now, I'm not much of a car or piston engine person, so I can't personally speak massively on that side of things, but from what I gather, those are performing fairly realistically too, with a few similar shortcuts in the name of optimization and not making everyone's computer burst into flames. However, as alluded to before, it is not all sunshine and rainbows, and Chad surviving things he has absolutely no right to be surviving, because for as much as SimplePlanes 2 absolutely nails the whole build stupid thing, make stupid thing fly, accidentally kill your mates with stupid thing formula, there are still a few bits where it feels less like a finished gameplay loop and more like the scaffolding around one. And the biggest example of that is probably ironically the multiplayer. Now, multiplayer is one of SimplePlanes 2's best features, full stop. The moment you add other people into a sandbox, the experience becomes about 10 times funnier and roughly 30 times more chaotic. You get all those brilliant unscripted moments where a rescue mission turns into a mid-air collision, which turns into a naval invasion, which turns into Chad being launched out the back of a cargo plane like a budget action man with no union representation. That chaos is part of the appeal. But at the minute, the game doesn't really give the server hosts enough tools to shape that chaos into anything sort of remotely useful, because there is a very important difference between funny chaos and some bellend that's joined the server in a thermonuclear lawnmower and decided to ruin everyone's race. Right now, if you want a server to actually have an identity, whether that's racing, roleplay, milsim, nonsense, casual building, or whatever particular flavour of autism you and your mates have brought to the table, there needs to be a bit more control on the host side. Basic moderation tools are all well and good, but it could really do with things like better spectating, player activity logs, and some sort of rough filtering so the host can at least tell the game, no, I do not want this server full of hyper-edited missile buses and engine exploits, thank you very much. It doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to stop about 80% of the bollocks before the host has to manually kick it out of the server. Speaking of server control and direction, missions, they are technically a thing that exists in the game. Now you would think that for a game called SimplePlanes 2 that there would be a decent number of things to do with said planes, and don't get me wrong, there are a few activities, but in my opinion, they're a bit shit. And I say that not to be cruel, but because they feel incredibly bare bones, like they exist because somebody had a checklist that said missions on it and thought that'll do, which is a shame because the car content actually has some proper fun races, and while that side of the game isn't exactly endless, there's enough there to whet the appetite. By contrast, I can count on one hand the number of times someone has initiated an airborne activity on a server, and it's honestly a bit depressing for a self-titled plane game. Realistically, what I want is to roleplay as Barnes Wallace, except shit and possibly dropped on the head as a child, cobbling together terrible airborne machinery in the vague direction of national service. But that all falls a bit flat when you hop into your BVR fighter to intercept an enemy bomber raid, only to discover your BVR missiles are about as useful as a chocolate arrestor hook, and the mission consists of one bomber and a single fighter escort. That's not a story, that's a disappointment. Congratulations, you have successfully defeated John Boyd 50 years past his prime, and now the bomber has shot itself and diverted into the nearest hillside. That said, I do have it on some tentative, reasonable level of authority that the dev team are looking into better missions in future along with better AI, which I'm genuinely excited for. Assuming, of course, they actually pull the rabbit out of the hat instead of producing a confused-looking squirrel. On the subject of things to do, there is also Chad. I love Chad. You love Chad. We all love Chad. He gives the game personality, he gives it identity, he gives it a mascot that looks like he was engineered specifically to experience violent physics interactions for our amusement. But short of running, dancing and getting in and out of aircraft, he can't really do all that much aside from occasionally sprinting directly into a missile and annihilating both himself and the concept of guidance logic. The missile doesn't know where it is because Chad has just run into it at Max Jesus, and now it and the craft it was attached to is gone. But my point is that Chad currently feels like a bit of a nothing burger. The game's own banner alludes him to being able to use things like a parachute, but alas, it would appear that the cost of living crisis has hit Chad as well, because for early access release he apparently can't afford one. It feels like wasted potential, and I really do hope the devs do more with him by giving him actual tools and items like a parachute, or repair kit, or jerry can, or wingsuit, and maybe a grappling hook, and maybe a rocket launcher. And ideally ragdoll physics so he could achieve his final form as a completely uncontrollable physics goblin. My final and probably biggest grievance though is the environment. I've struggled to summarise it before, but as others have previously mentioned, it really does feel like quantity over quality. Waterways are stepped, roads have had a habit of, during playtesting, of vanishing or getting blocked by trees, and part of me thinks this sort of thing will continue popping up in one form or another, which to be fair is not exactly unheard of in early access, and probably something to be expected in early access. But the bigger issue for me is that the environment just isn't especially interesting. There are technically different biomes, but they all feel very similar. Similar textures, similar terrain, similar vibe. There's no dramatic canyon to reenact Top Gun Maverick, at least not unless you want to be pulling 50 Gs like the one near Bannock. There's no Mac Loop equivalent. Vegetation variety mostly boils down to tree or painted suggestion of grass. The whole thing feels like a handcrafted world, less like a handcrafted world and more like someone generated a large island, looked at it for 3 seconds and went, yeah, that'll do, and then try to force meaning onto it afterwards. As one playtester put it, that wasn't myself, it feels like putting lipstick on a pig. And to be fair, it is still a pig. If you look at games like Ark Survival Evolved or Pal World, their maps feel like they were built with purpose. Different zones exist for different reasons. They feel deliberate. Here it feels more like someone picked a seed for a map and then only later started wondering what any of it was actually for. Now I'll concede that the map isn't catastrophically bad. Some new textures, more varied vegetation like bushes or long grass, and a bit more environmental identity could go a long way toward making the best of a slightly wonky situation. Now, it has to be said that the devs are aware of this feedback. Pretty much everything I've just talked about here was compiled into a report and sent over to Andrew, the lead developer. I've not really heard much since then, and somehow that report caused a bit of drama, but that's a story for another time because this video is already wandering off into the weeds badly enough as it is, and I'm not particularly fond of opening old wounds. So, After everything I've been through, would I recommend this game? Yes, because for all the pain that being a playtester and stock craft builder has caused me, I've also had some fantastic experiences and made some genuinely brilliant memories playing it with some new friends. Craft building is more enjoyable than it has any right to be, and after not properly touching SimplePlanes in quite literally years, SimplePlanes 2 has genuinely reignited that spark for building aircraft and general airborne stupidity. For all my grievances, the game is still in early access as of this recording, and Andrew, Kevin, Pedro, Nikki and the rest of the team have clearly put a huge amount of effort into it. So no, it's not perfect, but it is already a very good sandbox, a very funny multiplayer experience if you get everyone on the same page, and a dangerously effective way to lose several hundred hours of your life building something that absolutely should not fly, only for it to fly beautifully right up until the point it kills you. That is the essence of SimplePlanes 2. A great digital playground for engineers, goblins, and anyone who has ever looked at a jet and thought, yes, but what if I put 6 of those on a bus? And on that note, ladles and jelly spoons, goodbye and thanks for watching.